Okay, so in this video, I'm gonna talk about NestJs, my favorite framework for the backend development in Node.js. And in NestJs, we have so many features. In this video, we are going to cover the interceptor, the basic thing only. So, what is an interceptor? You see, when the request arrives at the backend, it must be handled by a controller, right? A controller calls some services and they call some other services, but at the end of the party we are left with some data that controller needs to send back. Now what if there is a generic requirement for all the data, like you cannot send back null? Like if any of the controller, maybe you have 5,000 controllers, if any of them returns null, it's not good. You have to send a proper response instead of sending null, because that's a bad practice. So in times like this, you won't be editing 5,000 controllers, will you? Now there that's why we have interceptors. Interceptors is basically a middleware, but they are not in the middle, they are in the end, or they can be in the middle. They intercept the request and they takes over the request, and they have a lot of power in the hand. They can manipulate the response and they can cut the request short. They can like terminate the request in the middle, and they can be used to add additional data to the request, to the response, um, along with the data that came from the controller, if that makes sense. Now without further ado, I would like to go start coding immediately, showing you the full extent of like how you can use a simple interceptor in your application. There are far more advanced use cases as well. We are gonna cover them a bit later. Okay, so in the meantime, you can also read this documentation about interceptor. Pretty cool. They have all the things mentioned here. Whatever, I'm gonna show it to you. Okay, now the first create an application, and this installation things take a little time because of the dependency tree of the NestJs. In the meantime, I'm gonna go through this documentation with you guys. You should definitely read this. And yeah, this is an example interceptor for logging things, to make your own custom logging um, thing. You can use this interceptor, and then there are ways to actually implement the interceptor in different parts of your application. That's also pretty important. Like the scope of interceptor, it doesn't mean like if you write an interceptor it should be applied to all the APIs in your backend. It can only be it can be applied to all of them, like globally. It can be applied to one specific controller, or one specific API, or one specific module. You get my point, right? It's really flexible. All right, we have it. Let's let's do it. Okay, we have our basic application ready with a release note from somebody. Okay, give me a second. Now I'm gonna add this link to the description and the GitHub repo, of course. But here we have a basic application, npm, and we have Thunder client to make requests. That's okay with you. Localhost default port is 3000, and it's always HTTP. I make a request, I got a string back which is hello world. That is fine lol, and I can change this to a better one called object. I don't have a specific thing here, but I can assume returning a message saying hello world. And if I try now, it says it sends the JSON that returns hello world as a part of JSON or an object. Now gonna write my interceptor just here. You can of course make some fancy interceptor. Hope I spelled that right. Huh. So first thing, intercept. If I can type properly, I'm gonna app interceptor, which implements next nest interceptor. All right, and interceptor has this okay, thanks ChatGPT for I mean Copilot, but I think I'm gonna disable you for a bit. Yeah, now it's better. Don't want it to interrupt me while doing things. Intercepting. Look, I have created an interceptor now, but that's not it, and we need to do something else like dot, and Copilot didn't get shut up. Map by RxJS. We have data, and this data is response data, like the response that you came from the controller or something. Const request equals to context.get request. Well, here it is of type any, so like this will be kind of confusing. So what you can do is you can use express request, but not all the things from the express request will be, you know, just there. So don't use path name or path, to use URL. That's like that's what you should use. And there are of course method which you can use to like get data and whatnot, but if you want just data, or if you want like params or query, you can use this to get a query parameter, you know. But if you just want the data and you want to manipulate it, then here's the request data. It's of type unknown right now, and that's all right. But yeah, like you can add typing to it. I will show you in a bit how you can add typing to it. For now let's just do this, and we can just put date, and date will be new date, and as the type is unknown we cannot change it because it's unknown, so we make it any for now. This is bad practice. Don't do it in your production application and blame it to me, okay? This is just an example. Don't use any. All right, now if you still make the request, it's still gonna be hello world. Why is it gonna be hello world? Because we just wrote an interceptor, we didn't use it actually. So how to use an interceptor? Now that's a great question. Now let's just go by the documentation first. I want to show you, like, this is not coming from some secret sauce. This is really basic, and there are so many ways to use an interceptor, like literally so many. Binding interceptor, let's see. So this is one of the ways that I know. You just open main.ts, and here you have app, right? And you use this kind of new app interceptor, and it just works, you know. Like this is how you use a interceptor at a global level. Now all the requests that comes into server and will be handled by this application will be used by this interceptor. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. All right, now let's try, and now we get the it says intercepting and we get the thing. But we don't want that, right? We don't want every request of the application to go through interceptor. Or suppose we want that, but we don't want to edit this file, this important main.ts file, because personally I don't like to touch that file. So what do we do then in that case? So we use something else, and it gives us an advantage. Module. So suppose you have 50 different modules and you want to point or target only one module, so you use provide and app interceptor. And by the way, this is just a constant string, okay? Like you can check, just if you can just literally write this, but to be type safe, you can use this variable which points to a string, and then you use class app interceptor. Now again, this is gonna be global because you used it in the app interceptor, which is the starting point of all the things. But if you have 5 different modules, like if I create NestJs, what do I write? Roots. If there is a module named roots, then this interceptor is gonna be handling that root also. But if I just cut this and put it to this roots module, like put it here, then it won't be intercepting others modules request, it will just be intercepting roots module request. Now that's a very important difference there. Now let's try again, like if you send a message, it's still intercepting. And yeah, that is pretty cool. If I remove it from here, roots module, and put it here, and it says app interceptor, but don't mind naming, like this is just an example application, right? And of course there is no class right now, and we can just send back roots. Getting the okay, so this cannot find an object, just use any. Well, something seems to be off. Did I forget how to write a request? Okay, yeah, my bad, thing wasn't closed. And yeah, we can just use object right now, it's okay. And yeah, now if I send request to /roots, now that gives us interceptor. Did I remove from the main interceptor? It's well, now it's removed from all the places, which is good. We want app interceptor to be only in the roots service, and it is there in the root service, but now it is there in app service also. Let me just test another thing. Should I create a roots to? Yeah, and want to see if roots to also have this interceptor. Roots to does also have this interceptor. This is kind of interesting. So if you add this to a module, its scope avails to all the modules. So how do we overcome this, like putting it as a global scope? Because of course that's not gonna solve all our problems, right? We need to use it for a specific module also, like we need we need to put it under a specific module. For that I have another thing, so you can use it as a decorator. Let's have you, yeah, we have removed from there. Let's use called use, and another thing called use interceptor. It's a decorator kind of, and if I use it here like this, let's see what happens. Yeah, now, and yeah, now the interceptor only triggers when I have slash roots on, because as you can see, it has only this controller has use interceptor allowed, and interceptor is not used anywhere else. Yeah, so this is the second use case of the interceptor. I should comment this out, should put it in the app.module and then comment it out for anybody who wants to implement this way. There's nothing wrong with that way. Interceptor for all routes, yeah, that should do it. And this is kind of it for the basic 101 on interceptor, or how does it work. Let me think, do I have something else? Well, one thing, if you don't want the whole controller to use the interceptor, and if you have like 5 different requests, like this, then it's okay. You can use interceptor on particular request as well, like only this request should be using this this particular interceptor, and other request uses other interceptor. It is all right. How do we do that though? So roots here, it's okay, and then slash roots2, and then it responds with roots2, and it responds with roots. And if I put the interceptor here on 2 and I request roots, then it does nothing, but if I put 2, then it intercepts the request. So we are now scoping the interceptor to a particular point where it just intercepts only one request from only one controller and not the whole module or the whole application. So that's how we use interceptor. Another actual use case can be like testing, like if data equals to null, only then, otherwise return data, only then return new HTTP exception. So you can do it like this, or instead of return, put throw there. And if I will deliberately return null now on the interceptor 2, and see, we got a response 404, and yeah, this is a very cool example of using interceptor. So should I write some comment? API endpoints specific interceptor, and if I use it here, this will be controller specific interceptor. And like the action that this interceptor is doing right now can be a part of global interceptor, I believe, because we don't want any API to just return null, right? That would be ugly. And if this also returns null, I would want my application to return at least a 404 and return source code not found, or like whatever, not found. So as you can see, this is pretty neat, comes very handy in times of need. And yeah, this is what I wanted to share with you today, the request interceptor and how it can be useful for some of the specific use cases. It can help you reduce so much of the work if you know when to use it and how to use it. There are many use cases of interceptor, like this interesting one, which is caching. So if you have an endpoint that does a lot of calculation and returns something, so for a specific time of window, you can return a pre-saved response. And then there is a timeout response interceptor that is given by the NestJs awesome team. In this interceptor, if the request takes more than 5 seconds, then you throw this request timeout exception, which is also pretty cool. And then there are other use cases like error handling. So if there's any API which just crashes or while doing some operation, it gets handled here. Bad gateway exception that it returns gracefully to the end user. I think that's pretty awesome. You can use like literally just copy some of these and use it in your application. These are pretty awesome. Maybe you need to do some changing. Now about adding a response type to the interceptor, this is how you can do it. You can export a response with a generic type T, so that the data can be variable, right? Now this data will be this, so like this thing, uh, the transform interceptor transforms the data into something else. You get my point, right? This is how you add the typing to your response data for a particular API response to be transformed into something else. Now, yeah, like this is probably it. In the next few videos, I will try to cover someday like some of these or more advanced use cases if I came across something. Let me know if you have some other queries about Nest interception or NestJS, any topic that you want me to cover or look into, any third party application that I can implement or something. All right, thanks.